Hello fellow splicers.
Ever wondered how we execute DMLs and DDLs in Splice Machine?
Let's see how.
In this session, we're going to be going over some basic DDL and DML commands in Splice Machine. In general, with Splice Machine, the syntax for creating tables and schemas and all of those things are the same as any relational database. And so if you're familiar with SQL, all of this should just be a quick review for you. And maybe you'll see one or two things where the syntax is slightly different than what you're used to. But in general, it's the same as any other relational database. When you initially sign in to Splice Machine, the schema that is set into context is the one that is your user ID. So in this case, we've used SQL Shell to sign in, and the user ID associated with that is Splice. So if we wanted to see what schema is in section, if we do current values, current schema, it'll tell us that Splice is the current schema that is in session. Now, you can create a schema that is not associated with a user in order to group a certain set of tables and views and indexes. And that's what we're going to do. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a schema called DDL. And then we're going to set that schema into session. So now, if we were to run the same statement that we first ran, we'll see that the current schema, or the schema that is in context now, is DDL. So let's create our first table. We're going to create a customer table. And in this customer table, we have a first name, an ID for it, a field indicating if it's active or not. We have a create date, and we've defined a default for it, and the default will be the current date. And we've set the ID as the primary key. Now there's a couple different ways that you can set the primary key, and we'll be going through those in a couple of other tables that we create. So we see that the table gets created. Now if we do a describe on that table, we'll see that the table's been created with all the columns we've defined. If we want to be able to see what the primary keys are, we go show primary keys from customers, and we see that the ID column is the primary key. If I look at this table, I realize that I forgot to add in a last name, and so what we're going to do is we are going to alter this table, and we are going to add in a last name. If we now describe this table again, we'll see that the table now has a last name column. So let's insert some data into this table. So we have our insert statement, and the syntax for it is insert into the name of your table, the columns that you want to insert data into, and then values. If you press enter, record's been inserted. We'll select everything out of customers to see that it's there. So we see that the record's there, as well as there's a default now or there's a value for the create date. One thing that you can do in the Splice command prompt is that you can create a prepared statement so that you don't have to type the same statement in over and over again. And so this is the syntax of a prepared statement. You do prepare customers as, and then whatever your statement is. Now if you want to execute that statement, you would do execute customers, and then passing in just the values clause where you have everything that is has a value for the question marks, the placeholders that you had defined in your original prepare statement. Now what you'll see is that the each column that is a varchar or a string value needs to have double single quotes around it, because the whole entire thing is surrounded in quotes. We're going to do this for another table, another value here. And now let's select records from that table. And we see now that we have 3 records in there. We have a default for the create date. Next, we're going to create an order header table. And in this table, instead of setting a value for the for the primary ID, for the ID field, we're going to have one that's going to be auto-generated. So in this case, we have generated as always, meaning that its identity column, it's going to start with 5 and it's going to increment by 5. Additionally, we've decided to define the primary key on the table itself, on the row itself, and we're giving it a name. This is optional. So let's insert a record into that table. And in this case, we're just specifying the customer ID and a total. And if we select out of that table, we'll see that we have a value ID starting at 5, and the create date's been defaulted. Let's enter in one more order, and let's see now the expected row is 10, and so, or the expected ID is 10. We're going to create one more table, and in this case it's going to be an order line table. And here what we're doing that's slightly different is that we are indicating that it's a primary key. And we're not naming it, we're just saying that this is the primary key for the table. Okay. Next we're going to create an index. And we're going to create an index on the order line table for order ID. Okay, so we're going to call it DML. And then order ID. And so this is that creates an index on the order line table on the primary key. Now we're going to create one more table, and this is going to be a customer phone table. This customer phone table is going to have a primary key, but it's going to be a composite primary key. So if we look here, we have the customer ID, we have the phone, we have a status, again the default for the create date, but in this case we're defining a composite primary key. Okay. Now, besides creating tables in these ways, you can also create a table from an existing table using the create table as syntax. So in this case, we are going to create a table called customer ridge1, and we're using a select statement, so we're selecting all of the customers or all of the columns out of the customer table, but we're specifying with no data. And when we specify with no data, what that means is that only the structure of the table is copied. Now the primary keys aren't copied, nor is the data copied. So if we do a select asterisk from customer ridge 1, we won't have any records. If we do a show primary keys from customer ridge 1, there'll be no primary keys. Now if we decided that we wanted to create a table with data, then we would remove the no, and in this case I got to change my table name. Okay. Oops. And so now if we select records from this table, we'll see that 3 records were inserted right here. And let's just confirm that the data was copied over. We have 3 records there. And one more thing, again, the primary key is not copied over. So that is how you can create tables using the create table as statement. Let's insert some data into our customer phone table. Okay, so again, it's insert into the name of the table, the columns, and the values that you want to insert data into. We're going to create a view, and we're going to join the customer table with the phone table. And since it's possible that a customer doesn't have a phone associated with their record, we're going to do a left outer join on the customer ID being equal to the customer ID in the phone record. Okay, so now if we select asterisk from full customer, you'll see that we have the 3 columns that we selected, and in the one case where we have a phone number, there's a phone number, otherwise it's null. If you want to delete records from a table, the syntax is delete from your table name. In this case, we'll delete everything from customer phone table. Let's confirm that there are no records in the table, and it shows 0 records in the table, so everything has been removed. Let's say, for example, we wanted to, you could also truncate the data. So instead of deleting the data, you can do truncate table, and let's say we want to truncate the customer table. If we select everything, we'll see that there's no records in that table anymore. If you want to drop a view, it's drop view, and then full customer. Oops, had a little typo there. So now, and then if I want to drop a table, it's drop table. Let's say I want to drop one of those temporary tables I created. That's how you drop a table. If you want to drop an index, simply drop index and then the name of the index that you created. So in this case it is order line, and now the index is dropped. Well, that concludes our quick overview of the DDL and DML statements. Please check out our documentation site for more details on other types of DML and DDL statements. Hope this helps you get started on your road down learning Splice machine.